Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out a Green Lantern issue 18 by Jeremy Adams, Xermanico and Romulo Fajardo Jr. The Civil Core comes to a thrilling conclusion this issue as Thaaros, using his new Darkstar ring, arrives on Oa to destroy the Green Lantern Corps once and for all. To combat the villain, Hal gathers what's left of the Lantern Corps for one final stand for Oa and their lives. Hal is having a hard time in the fight since he's literally fighting his friends and fellow Corps members, and Adams captures his despair and anger rather well. He hates that they got caught off guard by Thaaros of all people and the Durlans, but he doesn't let it overtake him and he manages to wrangle everyone together to come up with a plan to get to Thaaros and stop him. Sinestro even helps out, offering to keep the United Planet's lanterns distracted long enough for Hal to get in nice and close. Kyle Rayner meanwhile confronts Varan within the heart of the Source Lantern, wanting to stop him from taking the power for himself. Now this reveal of Kyle in the Source Lantern should have been the big reveal that he was still alive. At the end of the last issue they revealed that Kyle was killed when he tried to enter the Source Lantern, and then they somehow, for some reason, revealed just 2 pages later that he was very much alive, and this should have been that reveal that he's still alive and he's fighting within the Source Lantern. It would have been a bit of a surprise and a bit of a real hell yeah moment, but here it just feels like he's doing what he usually does. There's no real tension to it since you know that he's very much alive and seemingly can't die because now he's a White Lantern again. Thanks to his connection to the Lantern, Varan has learned why the emotional spectrum has been unstable. Guardians were absorbing emotional energy to heal themselves, and doing so unbalanced everything. Varan wants the healing power all for himself now, while the White Lantern Kyle, along with his giant sword, thinks otherwise. The two have a big fight. While Kyle fights for the fate of the emotional spectrum, Jessica is still being tortured by Kilowog. Jessica tries to get through to him and realizes that maybe her own willpower on top of Kilowog's can help him break control over Tharos' power that the villain instilled in Kilowog. Flooding Kilowog's mind with her own willpower, Jessica manages to free Kilowog, and we get a nice concise recap on how Kilowog became a Yellow Lantern. And it's pretty cool, as when he and Hal tried to stop the assassination attempt on Karuga, he was captured and assumed killed. However, the heart of the yellow power battery saved him, which caused it to explode, and in the aftermath the Yellow Lantern Kilowog was found by Thaaros and made into one of his soldiers. I'm glad we did get some explanation on why he became a Yellow Lantern, and it probably should have happened somewhat sooner, but at least we did get it before the end of the event. Glad that her friend is safe, Jessica invites Kilowog to join the fight as Star Sapphire confronts the Predator, an alien from within the heart of the Star Sapphire that was once the embodiment of love, but now it's something more monstrous and is seemingly obsessed with Carol, hence why it sought her out again and gave her the last Sapphire ring. It wants to be with her and kind of be one with her, and that's what it views love as. Adam's keeping Carol embedded in the story while giving her her own little arc away from everyone about figuring out how to be a Star Sapphire again is very fun. Her arc across the book, from Earth-based support to returning with Hal, reuniting with Hal, to refinding her heroic side during Absolute Power when she was with the JSA, has been so rewarding, and Adams sort of culminating it here with her confronting the Predator is really great. Hal and the others meanwhile confront Thaaros, and the Source Lantern breaks open in a violent explosion, which decimates much of the Owen City Center. Out of the Lantern comes Varan, who has defeated Carl yet again, and decided it's time he kills his uncle Thaaros. I really want to give some props to the artist Xermanico, whose wonderfully simple designs for Varan and Thaaros lend themselves well to the action throughout the book. It's easy to follow who is who, and the scale of it is all fantastically captured too, and considering we only have just a real small handful of characters, which is very surprising for an event of this scale, it still feels cosmically large and far-reaching and cinematic. As the two villains fight each other, emotional energy begins enveloping the battle, and it causes a rip in space to open above Oa, which births a series of tentacles. Adams includes some very cool nods to things that Philip Kennedy Johnson was playing around with in both his Superman run and his John Stewart War Journal book. Things like a mention of Olgrun, one of the old gods, pretty prominent in his Superman Warworld storyline. Lantern Shepard explains that the tentacles are that of the old gods themselves, and Varen is trying to summon them to their universe. Hal refuses to retreat though, despite the possibility of facing literal gods, and seeing their enemies rallying, Varen and Thaaros decide to do exactly the same, putting aside their differences to kill the Lanterns first. Now this feels like a trope that happens all the time when you have multiple villains, where they decide to team up to fight their common hero, and here though it feels rather poorly written since it just happens, and just like the dialogue on Varen and Thaaros and how they say it's like, let's kill the Lanterns, yes, let's do that, let's team up, like it feels kind of hastily written, and it was something that was kind of thrown in at the last minute, like maybe this wasn't meant to happen. This is very weird and how it kind of came to be, especially since there was no hint that these two wanted to team up at any point in the storyline. You know, they've been attacking and viciously trying to kill each other up until now, and then all of a sudden, oh, let's team up. Feels a little strange. Luckily for Hal and the other Lanterns, Kilowog and Jessica arrive to help out, delivering some much needed justice and revenge to Thaaros. With the help of their friends, the Lanterns begin to push Thaaros and Varen back towards the portal, throwing them through it as Kyle uses the White Lantern powers to close it back up, as the Revenant Queen on the other side of the portal finds Thaaros and her lost ring, seemingly reclaiming it. With the threat taken care of, the book begins to kind of wind down here, and we get some hints of what's to come as a pretty big status quo shift with the Lanterns is about to happen. As well, the Guardians have returned, the emotional spectrum is forever changed now, and now anyone can manifest a color at any time, including ones never even heard of. Hal calls these fractal lanterns, and thanks to them, the universe is now more of a Wild West than ever before, so it's up to Hal Jordan and his friends to protect it. Meanwhile, Carol is still locked into battle with the Predator, and for countless eons, the Predator has corrupted and threatened Star Sapphires like Carol, and wants to bond with Carol since she is the last Star Sapphire, and this is how the being perceives love, and it's this need to be bonded with another person is what it views love to be and what it needs to do to have love. Carol decides to school the monster on what love is, telling it that love comes from kindness and respect, not obsession. Thanks to her outpouring of love, Carol is able to banish the Predator, and with it, the part of her life that was holding her back. This is all symbolic of Carol starting over her life again with Hal. She's now a Star Sapphire again, she can be with Hal again as he travels the galaxy, and she decides to be a hero again at this moment. I also feel this is somewhat her moving on from Nathan, since Nathan does indeed come back into the story, ever so briefly though in the final page, as the newly christened Sorrow Lantern arrives on a faraway world where he meets with Starbreaker, who promises Nathan that he can help him stop feeling and make everyone in the universe stop feeling as well. Now, Adams has written Starbreaker before when he was doing Flash, and I loved how he brought the villain back here, setting him up for the next big arc for the Lanterns and positioning Nathan in an interesting role as almost Starbreaker's heavy or right-hand man for whatever the villain has in store for Hal and the others. And I have to imagine that Sorrow will be coming after Hal next, since Hal, in Sorrow's eyes, ruined his life. Green Lantern issue 18 marked the end of the Civil Corps and the threat Jeremy Adams and his team have been building over the last 17 issues. While it did feel rushed in kind of a few places, I really appreciate Adams for managing to work in every major human lantern in the story in some capacity. They all had a role across this story and across his series so far in some major way. And he did all of this while also exploring some new things like the Sorrow Lantern and Carol's return as the Star Sapphire. I can't wait to see what 2025 brings for Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10.